So that's my manifesting that.
Yeah, that sounds more like a manifestation than a prediction.
Hey, we'll see. It'll happen.
Welcome to Human in the Loop, a series where we discuss what it takes to build and deploy real-world systems for the enterprise.
Welcome to Human in the Loop. Today we're going to be talking about the next 6 months for enterprise AI. I'm Sam Denton.
I'm Ben Sharfstein.
And I'm Felix Sue.
Let's go ahead and kick it off to you, Sam. What do you think is happening in the next 6 months?
Cool. So I have 3 takes overall. The first is that right now, when enterprise think about evaluation, 90% of the time they're looking at evaluating text or rankings of text. And 10% of the time they might be evaluating actions. I think 6 months from now, that's going to completely flip. And they're going to be evaluating 90% of actions and only 10% sort of text. And what that means is that when they evaluate these actions, the actions will actually be taken. So you can think about an agent saying, hey, I'm choosing between these 2 options. What do you think I should do? And the enterprise the enterprise SME will then actually choose an action, and the action will be taken as a result of that eval. So the eval landscape will really switch from text to actual action.
What do you think that means in terms of, are the evaluations going to be more about metrics, like live, you can think about production metrics, like did it take the thing that the end user wanted, and that is just, you have a BI dashboard or whatever you're looking at this, like similar to like how Amplitude or any of those tools look at your metrics. Is that what the eval looks like? Are we still doing these offline evaluations where you're having someone in, either an LM as a judge or a human annotator going in and evaluating?
I think we'll see kind of both, honestly. So I think sometimes it's going to be these live metrics. You sort of react to sort of what the metrics are telling you. And I think in other moments, we'll have these really long running processes where it's okay for the action to be taken sort of 12 hours later when a human SME gets there, right? And when they're ready to sort of choose between 2 options.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of complexity as we go from workflow, kind of deterministic, do A, B, and C in a row, to these agentic, situations where it's, everyone is unique, and the result of action A then influences what happens next. It's going to be like kind of complicated to do these evaluations. I think that the production metrics are going to be very important in setting those up for success, like how you actually instrument these things, how you define success, like what is your reward function or whatever's your metric that you're trying to optimize for is going to be kind of the core of actually building highly performant AI in enterprise.
Yeah. And, to Felix's team, it's going to be really hard to set up these sort of environments and infrastructure to allow eval to sort of happen 12 hours after the thing the action was suggested, and then actually take the action sort of 12 hours later. So looking forward to seeing how you guys figure out how to do that.
Yeah, it's on me, I guess. Well, I mean, like, yeah, I'm curious what you're thinking. Like, you're saying like, you do a rollout, at some point you have a pause because it needs to be approved by something, and then you need to click on it and do the eval. I'm wondering like what you're thinking about in terms of how the evaluation tooling will look. Mm-hmm. Is it like you're doing like you're live dumping all those rollouts into an evaluation table, and then you need to do the evaluation after everything is done, and then you might have partial some rows filled out and stuff like that? What are you thinking about in terms of what the experience would look like?
Yeah, I can imagine it as like, rather than right now it's option A versus option B, as like, do you prefer this LM's answer, this LM's answer? It's like tool call A versus tool call B. Do you want the LM to take this action or that action? So the complexity for sort of the infrastructure for evaluation is actually having those tool calls available live in the sort of evaluation framework, right? So that you can actually see what happens when you choose tool call B, and then sort of adjust the trajectory accordingly.
But do you expect that to be different at the time of inference? Like, let's say, for example, I guess I'm seeing 2 paths here. One is live, you've paused the entire rollout, and you're just like waiting for it, and that's being logged to an eval, and then somebody actions upon it, which then goes back and triggers the live interaction to continue.
Yes, exactly.
That's right. So you see like two, you get like a fork in the road. You have option A, option B, you click it, it goes back and does something. What if I want to, as an evaluator, see what happened if I choose option B and then let that rollout happen? I mean, the possibilities are kind of endless about the number of forks that you have to handle and things like that. Mm-hmm. Or are you just going to say that's up to me?
Yeah, that's your problem.
Okay. All right. Yes, there will be a lot of opportunity to kind of explore the this space where like there are a ton of options that will fork out. we talk about a lot of like different preferences on what to choose and what paths to take. So I'm sure this one will be a challenging one.
I think it's just going to be a much more impactful evaluation experience, but also a lot more complex from the back end. You're no longer looking at a static sort of screen with two strings, right?
Yeah.
Okay, my second take for enterprises is actually that work-life balance is going to get better. I think when COVID happened, everyone kind of like brought their computers home and started working all the time nonstop. And I think now that we have sort of like agents where you can kind of kick off some jobs overnight and you actually trust that the agents do these jobs overnight, that hopefully people can kind of go back to working 9 to 5 sometimes and not having to sort of think about their computer being at home and, oh, it's midnight, I really need to get that email out. So I'm hoping that maybe agents can kind of help with work-life balance for people, after the COVID effects.
I think I am torn on this one. I think my wife would tell you that because it's easier for me to prompt a model to do the coding for me, I will take my computer with me in situation where normally I would not. Like normally if I need a code and I need to write like 300 lines of code, I'm going to be like, all right, we're going to go to dinner. I'm not going to finish in 30 minutes. So I'm not going to bring my laptop. But now I'm like, I can finish in 30 minutes.
So you're bringing a cursor to dinner now?
Well, I'll be like, babe, do you want to drive? And then like, I'll be saying, I'm like,
okay, so maybe work-life balance for you is not
maybe not the
better.
same for me as for everyone else, but I'm a little torn on this one. Definitely, there is definitely a lot of opportunity for agents to take over, but I do abuse that free time for sure.
Cool. And then I think my last hot take or my last prediction for the enterprise sort of AI market is that the cutting edge enterprises will start to create these sandbox environments for them to collect RL data for their agents. And I think, I'm really sort of like pushing enterprises to do this because I think it's going to unlock a lot for sort of continuous learning and RL and things like that. But I think the cutting edge enterprises will have that in the next 6 months and have these sandbox environments where they can kind of collect data on the type of actions or traces that they want these agents to actually know how to do.
Yeah. I think if you look at what the leading model companies are doing and what they're doing today, what they were doing a few months ago, and you just pull that forward.
Yeah.
That's a pretty clear way of saying what enterprises are doing. And obviously what we do, one of the things that we do, one of our core value props is how do we bring you closer, how do we bring enterprises closer to what the leading companies are doing? And they're definitely doing that, right? We see these RL environments, whether they're encoding agents or other types of agents, that is the state of the art. And I agree with you that the delta between what the labs are doing and what enterprise is doing that's compressing those timelines. And so, I think in 6 months, if they're especially working with the right partners, they'll be doing those.
We're looking at you.
Yeah. but I think everyone will be. This is kind of like what makes a lot of sense as we go towards continuous learning and as we go towards the customizing these agents to enterprise environments.
I think there's going to be steps to it though, because like when you say sandbox, I think everyone's immediately jumps towards the browser use kind of like VM kind of thought. But I think we kind of touched upon this last time. It's like there's a step right before that where it's just about consolidating the interfaces to your data, right? Because like I remember my sister used to work at Bonobos. It's a company that's like a subsidiary of Walmart now, and so they had disparate data, like kind of like all over. And it was just like really hard for you to kind of, like if you looked at it as a human, you were like, if I had access to all of this, technically speaking, I could come up with really good insights, right? But because it was so disparate, it was just really hard to like bring them together. And I feel like there's just a lot more pressure now for an enterprise to say like, look, if we're gonna want a clean AI interface to interact with all this stuff, we're gonna need to build the abstractions and then pull it together. I think there's a lot of pressure on CTOs. There's a lot of pressure on like the technical officers in enterprises to basically build this interface. I think the next level above that is like, okay, if you want an AI to do is in a VM, which is more natural to a human to actually exercise those things, like clicking on, if you had Windows and clicking on the icon of Excel is like completely different than using the Excel API, right? And so there's definitely going to be a gradient. I'd say 6 months is a bit compressed for me, for most of these people.
It's wishful thinking.
Yeah, definitely wishful thinking. But I think it's a step in the right direction.
Yeah. I think I also mean like not just like these like browser use things, but also like taking your production database and being able to actually make edits to it without actually editing your production database, right? So taking these like snapshots of where you're currently at in terms of your enterprise data, being able to mess around with it, see where you come out on the other side, and then being able to learn from that.
Oh, that is actually I wasn't even thinking that.
Oh,
actually.
okay.
Yeah. Okay. I get what you mean by now. Like for the people who are equally as confused as me, what you're saying is being able to have like clones.
Yeah, exactly.
Because if you're going to want an AI to go around and mess around, you're not going to want it to mess around your production system.
Yeah, exactly.
So you have to make these clones of everything.
Maybe sandbox was too loaded of a term.
Right. Yeah, but I get it now. I get it now. That 100% agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Let's move on to the next one. Felix, what do you think is going to happen? What are your predictions for the next 6 months?
Okay, I got a few. We'll start off softer here. I think first, I think there's this a little bit of a hot take, but I think there are going to be some people who are going to give up a little bit on AI. I think there is going to be a lot of people who are doubling down, but I think like the major companies know, like the big tech companies know that you need to invest, and they're willing to take a few shots on goal, and they're willing to miss a few times, and they know this is just part of the game. I know that a few startups will probably do that. There will be a lot of startups who are going to go up and down because they're also willing to take a few shots on goal, but there's going to be a middle layer of people who aren't able or willing to take that many shots, maybe partially because they don't fully understand kind of maybe it was just the wrong shot as opposed to AI not being effective, right? So you can imagine some enterprises will say, hey, let's just build a chat interface on something internal, and then people don't use it, and they're like, oh, maybe nobody needs it internally, or maybe it didn't return revenue for us, so we're just going to kind of give up on this. I think people aren't really talking about that, like sensitivity, like that middle layer. So I think it has to be said.
I'll give you a little bit of a layup of a follow-up question. Do you think that's going to be about the product experience for these middle layer sort of companies, or do you think it's going to be about the technology just not being there, or maybe both?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think thank you for the layup. I think it's obviously you need to build the right product. You need to pick the right use cases. Yeah. And I think, you look in 18 months, you look in 3 years, those enterprises that have given up now, I think it's not a stop, it's a pause. Yeah. And it will be that as new interfaces and paradigms emerge, as they get their data in the right place, as they fix some of the problems that maybe made it hard for them to adopt AI, they'll come back. But I do agree with you, Felix, that there are a lot of people where the investment may not be worth it right now, given the problems that they're trying to solve or the way they're trying to solve those problems. And, everything looks like a nail with some hammers today. And those hammers are actually pretty valuable. ChatGPT, Copilot, Gemini, these things are super valuable across a wide variety of use cases, but they don't solve everything. And sometimes they try to solve things that actually are better solved with really nuanced and thoughtful product experiences. But we'll see. We'll see, I think, what is the shape of those companies that give up and how soon they come back, because I think all of them will at some point come back. Software, as we know it, is really fundamentally changing, but it has to be applied in the right way. And trying to use an LLM to do something that, is a heuristic, or trying to use an LLM to do something that is actually better done by a human doesn't make sense. And, we're going to see a lot of those kind of use cases falling off in the next 6 months as the ROI needs to be there. And it's not in some cases.
Yeah. And I think making something new takes some extraordinary vision. And I think a lot of the times kind of like expecting that, your company, somebody in there is going to, all the stars are going to line up and they're going to like land the most amazing thing is a pretty tough thing for most companies. I also think something like an analogy I like to make is that every so often, or actually let me think about how I want to say this. Like in the past, people thought the 4-minute mile was unbreakable. I've told this to you guys probably before, so you probably heard it, but it's like the 4-minute mile was unbreakable. And then as soon as somebody broke it, I think the next year, a couple people like broke it basically, because it's just like, suddenly your imagination changes and you're like, oh shoot, that is possible. I can do things that way. And I feel like ChatGPT did that for a lot of people, right? You like woke up, you had it, and you're like, wait, what? Like how, like, oh, and then now everyone kind of latching onto that idea, right? And so I feel like some people are going to need the 3-minute mile to be broken, or a 2-minute mile to be broken, because they kind of need that little like jolt of like, oh, we can apply this. And chat might not be the perfect use case for some of these people who are going to give up. So maybe they're going to need this, like we're going to talk right now in a second. I'm going to give my next take about asynchronous agents and things like that. That might be the way to get there. And if they're not seeing it yet, maybe they just need to wait.
I have a question. So when we saw this like 4-minute mile moment in the foundation model providers with sort of ChatGPT, we saw OpenAI go from being very open about AI to being a lot more closed. Do you think that when there's this enterprise equivalent of breaking that 4-minute mile, do you think they'll stop talking about the AI that they're doing internally? Do you think it'll be much more private, or do you think because of what you have to share for the public markets and things like that, that they'll continue to share?
I think they're gonna talk about
Yeah,
it.
I don't think there's any doubt that they're gonna talk about it. It's like you accomplish something great, you have impact, it makes a difference on revenue. I mean, like if we're just talking about personalities, even just personally, I mean, you're gonna want to shout your own praises and say like I made a big difference, right? And so I don't doubt that there is more benefit to sharing than there is to being private. I think privacy is maybe for labs and people who are building like IP and technology that they don't want other competitors to have, but enterprises, I don't think there's any like reason why they wouldn't share what they've done. Yeah.
Well, it would be just to keep that competitive advantage against
other people.
Right? I think the fact that they're doing it, they're going to talk about, and they should.
Yeah.
How they do it.
Yeah, they're not going to.
People are going to keep more private.
Yeah. Okay. My next one. The next one is that there is going to be a pretty big shift to more autonomous agents. I think what I was just saying before, the 4-minute mile, the chat interface and expecting like, I think it's, to me, the 3-minute mile is that I don't have to sit next to you, right? There's an analogy that I give sometimes to people I work with here that I say, the restrictive thing about AI is I have to sit next to it. Like ChatGPT, Cursor, everything that I have, like right now I'm filming this podcast, there's no work being done for me on my behalf, which is fundamentally seems like it should be possible already. The fact that it's not possible already is why we're here and investing in agents and tool use and continuous learning and reinforcement, because those things are hard and they're not easy to apply, right? So I feel like enterprises, maybe because of a forcing function from us, because we believe in this, are going to move in this direction to say, okay, wait, maybe you should just switch the order of operations. Instead of having a human sit next to the AI is talking to me. Like imagine I had a earphone right now and I'm getting messages and saying like, hey, I did this. I finished all these chores for you. They're on your desk. When you go back to your desk, just review them and I can adjust anything you want. Like that is the next 3-minute mile to me. That would change my life like significantly, right? If you're talking about work-life balance, like that is like a massive difference to work-life balance. So what do you guys think about that?
You're getting this, thing implanted in your ear.
Yeah.
When you're at dinner with your wife, she's still.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, I'll be talking and she'll be like, "Are you talking to me?"
You're talking to your person.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. How do you guys feel about that? Do you feel like that's possible for enterprises? Do you think it's a little too early? What do you guys think about timing?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, I think we talk about this a lot. Long-running asynchronous agents, that is really the future. And today we have, request and response. And in some ways it's kind of skeuomorphic to how we use software today. And I think, when the iPhone first came out, you had all of these apps that were trying to replicate web pages. They didn't understand the value or replicate what you do on desktop. They didn't understand the value of being on mobile. And I think we're going to have this same transition over the next maybe 6, 12, 18 months with agents, which is that agents are not just software that you request and get a response immediately. The value of agents is twofold. One is that they can do long-running asynchronous tasks and take actions. And the second is that they can scale horizontally. And so today you have, one AI, one instance of ChatGPT that you request to do something, it goes out and does some work, maybe it does some deep research, and 10 minutes later it responds. But what we're gonna see is you're gonna make a request. It's gonna spawn 10,000 agents that are each gonna go do some work, combine that work, and get a response to you, in the long run. Yeah. And I think that is the kind of non-skeuomorphic version. That's like not the faster horse, but that's the car. Is really leaning into what makes these agents unique from the type of software that we have today. And I've talked about this before, but this is very similar to how snowflakes and data warehouses really separated the compute from storage in cloud and said, what does cloud really bring to the table? It's the ability to scale up our compute horizontally and then scale it down. And I think agents are going to do the same thing. You can do 10,000 agents for 1 minute as opposed to doing that information in serial and doing that for 10,000 minutes. So I totally agree with you. The way that we interact with agents is totally going to change. The agents are going to be working for us as opposed to us, sitting next to the agents.
And there's a really interesting thing I think we should briefly discuss, which is that you were talking about costs going down. I think this is a part of costs going down, right? It seems kind of counterintuitive. You're like, oh, if I scale it up and I ask the model 1 million times, why does cost go down? And I think it has something to do with what we talked about, this GPU utilization, right? It's like how do economies of scale reduce costs is because if they have high utilization, then all the machines that are sitting around doing nothing are suddenly being utilized, which can bring the costs down, right? Because you have high utilization. I'm curious what you think about this. As an ML engineer, you said there's a lot of machines sitting around that are just doing nothing. How can these AI agents like that are asynchronously running like utilize all these compute?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we've seen over and over again, I guess there's kind of like two sides of the same coin. One is that the more time that you give LLMs for inference time compute, the more they're able to accomplish, right? And so you can imagine that you say, you know, this is the task I want you to do. Based on how much utilization we have in our GPU cluster, use either a lot of compute or a little bit of compute. You know, I'm kind of open to whatever is available. And I think the other thing is sort of bringing this more unification between training and inference, and sort of doing inference when you have a lot of requests, when you have a lot of demand. And then when that demand dies down, take all your traces from inference and start training, right? And then as the inferences start scaling back up, ramp down your training, save a checkpoint, and go back to inference, right? So you can really imagine this sort of like unified maximal usage of GPUs.
Yeah. I think also as you move towards asynchronous long running work, you don't necessarily need to schedule all of that work during peak load.
Yeah.
So, you know, when
That's
people
smart.
are doing a lot of requests between 9 to 5, you wouldn't be doing a lot of this asynchronous work. And then overnight, or, you know, in times when there's low utilization, you can say, you know, you can do that. You just might need this before tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right. And
wait, do we have spot pricing for models yet?
What?
You know, spot pricing?
Yeah.
We
There's,
do?
Yeah.
Oh,
there,
we
you know,
already
there's
do.
companies working on
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
There's companies working on this, you know, and this is, I think, the future. We'll get there. I don't know what the impact will be on enterprises, but definitely.
Oh, huge.
It
I
will
mean,
be.
like AWS, they did the whole spot pricing thing
Yeah.
where they reduce costs during non-peak load hours. I mean, I'm sure every cloud company does that. So yeah, that'll be huge. Okay. And okay, my last one, quick before I hand it off to Ben, is that this one's a little bit more of a discussion point. How do you guys feel about the potential for, I think, more layoffs to happen? I think there are going to be large companies, especially large companies, who, you know, have traditionally hired in a more like, I'm going to train up a bunch of these people kind of concept, may not feel like they are able to do that much anymore with the advent of AI. I think in large tech companies, that is definitely a danger. That's a trend that I've been seeing from people who have come from large companies before. That's a fear that we never used to have, that we have now. I think services companies as well, that's a fear where they're not going to be able to kind of compete with the margins of people that are AI enabled. And so there is going to be, I think a few shuffling. Now, I think I've said in the past, I don't think it's going to cut 50% of jobs or anything like that. I do think there's a lot of opportunity for people to use AI, be with it. Your baseline 0 should be as good as AI. There are ways to kind of like level yourself up. So I think I encourage everyone to do that. But I do see there is a short-term period of time where there will be uncertainty in the job market for sure.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a reallocation. So, you know, we see consulting companies as well laying off, not hiring as many junior people. We see that true in software as well. I don't think the net result is going to be an increase in unemployment. And we're still going to see those people getting reallocated towards other companies that are really leaning in, and there is a really great utilization. And I think that the efficiency gains that people will get through adopting AI will change the margin profile of their business. They can hire more people. So, you know, I think there's these countervailing effects that are pulling against each other. We'll see. But I agree with you that, you know, obviously companies are laying people off because they realize that this function can be done by fewer people. And on the flip side, they're also realizing maybe this function is really valuable if you leverage AI, and they want to hire more people. So we'll see. We'll see where that lands.
It's just a shift.
Now let's move on to Ben. What's going to happen in the next 6 months?
Yeah, I think the most obvious one is that model prices will continue to come down. And we talked about this with better GPU utilization. I think there's a lot of model distillation happening at the labs. Sam Altman has talked about this, and it's been proven to be true. And the impact of this is that I think a lot more problems become tractable. And if you have to spend, you know, $1 to accomplish a task, you're not going to like transform some data for some user that's not, you know, to maybe try to upsell them on something. But if that costs, you know, a fraction of 1/100 of a cent, then that becomes a profitable, you know, thing for you to do. And so the implication in terms of what enterprise should be investing in is just focus on providing the value. Don't focus on the cost. In the past, when you had to think about, you know, compute costs, like your AWS bill was not going to decrease by 100x in 3 months. But that really could happen now. And we see this like with our customers. We see that the model price for the leading model from OpenAI comes down, and the second most powerful model gets as good as last generation's most powerful model and comes down 10x. And so you see a 20x or 30x or 50x reducing cost for the same work being done. And so it's really important just to invest in those workflows to really focus on the value that AI can bring, and cost is just going to go down to zero.
Yeah. One interesting byproduct of that, I think, is actually the infrastructure that you're asking the LLMs to work with. That doesn't decrease in cost. Like we recently were doing some exploration around sort of like a project with search. And we found that our limiter on cost was not actually the GPUs, but actually the cost of search APIs, right? And I think like there are going to be other effects like that, sort of as costs of LLMs come down, the bottleneck on cost will come from other sources.
Yeah.
I think 100% you have to assume that costs go to zero. Just look at the incentives, look at the demand, like all the things kind of align towards costs like going down, right? You're going to release new models. The previous models are going to become cheaper. You're going to see competitors release other models. They're going to have new techniques that might make their model cheaper, like DeepSeek, came out and kind of like made that a thing. And so, a lot of model providers are forced to reduce costs. Think about GPU utilization going up, which brings costs down. I mean, like all signs point towards cost going down. So we even had a customer that we used to have, right, where we focused a lot on fine tuning, and then, model costs were brought down to a level which made sense for them, right? And so it's just like, you should always, like you said, Ben, I think you should always design with the thought that the cost will go down, and you don't have to overthink it. And I think it aligns really well to something we talked about in the past in a previous podcast, which is like we said, you focus on the product UX. You make your thing useful in spite of whatever model it is there. And that gives you the flexibility to use that sliding scale to your advantage. If you feel like costs are prohibitively high or anything like that, you can reduce to another model. You can make your way through it. And as soon as the model gets to a cost that you like, turn it up, right? So this is all like part of the product design motion. Yeah.
Cool. My second prediction for the next 6 months in enterprises is we're going to see agents really hit production. I don't think this is a particularly hot take. I think agents are all the rage. I think there has been a question of like, what does the timeline look like? And I think things like MCP and different releases, OpenAI is starting to adopt MCP. All these types of things are actually really accelerating agents, because they're now able to access production grade tools, the system of record that the company cares about. And so, it's not going to happen overnight, but I think in the next 6 months, we're really going to see agents in production. And the implication of that is going to be that we're moving from efficiency. Tools today are mostly about information retrieval and about asking questions, to capability. And that's really the fundamental value that agents are going to bring, is that they're bringing new capabilities to bear. And those are going to be spread across two areas. One is automating entire jobs, so kind of automating entire jobs. Today, if you think about what ChatGPT does inside of an enterprise, it's not automating my job, it's just making me more efficient. But now, as we talked about, we can now have agents that are, I can scale up 10,000x, and they can actually expand my capabilities. So, if I'm working in private equity, for example, and I need to look at a deal room, that might have taken 5 analysts, 3 weeks or something to really go through, or I don't know, maybe they work 24/7 and it takes them 3 days. But now it can happen in 5 minutes. And so that's a completely new capability that's totally changing what's possible, the way I work, the speed at which I can work, and all those types of things. And these job functions are just really going to change. And the second thing is it's going to add new capabilities to our product, to the products, that people build. Adding a chatbot to your website is cool, but really adding like a really high level of personalization to your product, where your customers are using it, they are able to, leverage the agents that you've built for them to actually completely change what's possible. I think that is going to be really transformational. And we're seeing, lots of companies, lots of tech companies launch these agents. And I think we're going to see them come to enterprises in the next 6 months as well.
Yeah.
I dropped a lot there.
No. I think that framing is actually really, really helpful. I think to think about what does it mean to have autonomy? What does it mean for where these agents are going? Is you're going to go from, as you say, like efficiency gains to capability gains. I think that's like a really powerful way of thinking about it.
Yeah. I think some byproduct of that's going to be interesting is that I was talking to one of our product designers, Stain, and I was talking to him about we're building this new agentic thing for time, and I said, I need you to think about, you need to change a user's impression of what this interface looks like, because people are familiar with a search bar and like a chat interface, right? But if you change to an agentic thing, it still looks like a chat interface, like if you just think about it naively. But the problem is, now that you switched from information to capability, you kind of probably want a different interface. Or like if I look at a chat, I just assume it's going to give me information. If I look at something, let's say the futuristic version of this, like the agentic capability, like I need to know, first of all, what capabilities do you have? You know, like how do I know what you could do? So like, what can I ask you? I don't really know. And just like that, it's funny because back then, but right now, when you're looking at chat, you're like,
Felix is living in the future.
I'm already there. Yeah. But like, if you look at like a chatbot today, it's like you don't mind that it doesn't tell you anything because you don't expect it to have any other capabilities except for giving you information. But now you look at a thing and you're like, okay, you can, like, let's say take time, for example, you can traverse the site, you can navigate the page, you can change the things on the page, you can generate things. Like, how would I know? How would I know that? And so now you have this hard problem from a designer perspective of saying, I got to change somebody's expectation, like without too much overload, right? And so I do think we're going to see agents in production. I do think because there's a paradigm shift to capabilities, there needs to be a design shift as well. There's going to be some interesting things that come up in the future. Yeah.
So my last take and prediction is that we're going to continue to see an explosion in vertical AI companies in pretty much every sector. And I think they're going to be, trying to sell to enterprises. They're going to be quite effective at doing so. And there's going to be a buy versus build for these enterprises. These verticalized companies are really developing expertise, and they're doing quite a good job there. And so, right now we see them in things like legal, we see them in customer service, but I think there's going to be kind of a torso and tail of these vertical AI companies that are coming in. The benefit is that they're obviously become experts in what they're doing. The drawback of those vertical AI companies is that they are not kind of necessarily a single source of truth for your AI strategy, for orchestration. The companies and the enterprises don't necessarily get to own that technology and capability that could be very core to what they deliver and the products and the way that they work. So I think enterprises are going to face a choice in the next 6 months. Not just in customer support, but kind of in every job function and every role of, do they want to buy versus build on AI?
Yeah. What do you think the right answer is?
Well, I think it depends, and not just talking our book. Like, I think it really does depend. And sometimes it does make sense for them to go with one of these companies. They're, really providing very impactful services. I think when it's really core to the business and it's core to the strategy, when you pull forward 5 years, owning the AI capabilities is really important. And especially for leading enterprise, I think, in the SMB segment, kind of mid-market segment, it makes a lot of sense to buy. But if you are a market leader and an industry leader, you don't want to get the average of your competitors. What you want is to be differentiated. And I think one of the core values that enterprises have is they have a distribution. They have a lot of user data, which means that they can build very customized, very bespoke experiences that no one else can build. Mm-hmm. And they don't want to become just like everyone else. They should lean in to what makes them great, makes them the industry leader. And so oftentimes building with a partner like Scale really gives them that edge and expertise over, the fifth best player in the space.
Thanks for listening to Human in the Loop. To stay in the loop for more AI-related content, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe.